All right, folks, welcome back to Wooden Sticks, your favorite hockey podcast. As always, today we are recording from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. Really looking forward to our hockey conversation today with a dear friend of mine, Sam Ekstrom, who is the voice of St. Thomas Hockey. He does both men's and women's games. He does TV and radio. He'll also be doing some games in the PWHL, so I'll have the chance to work with him this winter. We've worked together before. He's been a part of Hockey Day Minnesota on back in the day, what was, I think, a Fox Sports North or Bally Sports North production. Super, super talented broadcaster and just a terrific guy to connect with. We're going to talk college hockey. We're going to get kind of a deep dive on the St. Thomas angle for sure, but so many different layers to that. He's also been involved with Locked On Sports and zone coverage in town, and so we're going to dabble into a little conversation about the Vikings and quarterback JJ McCarthy, a lightning rod right now for opinions in the sporting world here in this market. So Sam, very plugged in, a lot of connections on the Vikings side as well. So we're going to do a little hockey. We'll do a little football. We'll do a little stroll down memory lane, and we'll have a great conversation with Sam today. We're recording midweek. The Wild are getting ready for a nationally televised game this evening. We're recording on a Wednesday. They're playing on TNT tonight. They're a little banged up. Marco Rossi probably going to be out for a few weeks. And now Ryan Hartman is banged up. They're calling Hartman's a little more day-to-day than week-to-week. But those are two of your top centers. And so a huge, huge opportunity for the youngster Danila Yurov. He's going to get a kick at the can on the top line with Zuccarello and Kaprizov. So you've got two guys that I think can do some wonderful things with the puck. They like to take a little more chances. And the one thing we've seen for sure about Yurov, good in the face-off circle, so more often than not, the Wild are going to have the puck, but really responsible defensively. So I like that facet of a responsible guy that's going to go down low in the defensive zone, dig pucks out, get the team moving north, and give Zuccarello and Kaprizov maybe a little more time on the offensive side of the puck. Because if you've watched the last couple of weeks, and the Wild are playing great hockey right now, I think they've won 6 of 8, but there's a shift or two every night where Kaprizov and Zuccarello get pinned in their defensive zone and spend the entire minute playing defense. You want those guys on the attack, and maybe Yurov can bring some of that with how well he plays without the puck defensively, and we'll see if Minnesota can get a huge win. They played a great game against Carolina a couple weeks ago down in Raleigh. They lost a 4-3 hockey game, but I think that it's the type of game Minnesota has tended to be a team that rises up and plays the really good teams tough. So even though they're a pretty significant underdog tonight at home, I think this could be a good hockey game. Puck drop not till 8:55. So as I record here, I've got time to get ready for that. And certainly as you listen and digest this podcast later in the week, hopefully it was a good game and they kept the winning going. I'll be on the road this weekend as we go to Pittsburgh and beautiful Winnipeg. And I'd much rather go to Winnipeg in November than I would January or February. As far as the Wild go, we always kind of give you kind of a broad brush as to what we're seeing. I like a lot of facets of their game right now. I think they've figured out what their identity is. It takes teams usually a month or two to get there, but John Hines has talked with us a lot about it's a process, and these guys are still figuring it out. And he said that throughout most of October. It was a frustrating month for the coaching staff. It was a frustrating month for the players, but when they've, got to the November part of the schedule, they've won a lot more, and they've done it with defense. And I think this is a team that's figured out that on a particular night, they're not going to be able to go out and outscore teams and win games 5-4 and 7-6. This is a team that's got to win games 2-1 and 3-2. That's who they are right now. Who knows where they're going, but right now that's their best mode of operation, and they've gotten great production from their blue line. I think Damon Hunt and his addition back there subtly has been a real stabilizer. He and Zeev Boyum have played well together. That's allowed John Hines to play those top 4 guys the way he wants to play them. And, Middleton and Spurgeon have always had a great connection. And I think we can say this now, Faber and Brodin are your best. And that gives them a chance to be together and be a shutdown pair against whatever the opponent is. They're top guys. So the penalty kill's trending in the right direction. The team defense is trending in the right direction. But most importantly, the goaltending in November has been significantly better. And as we record this on a Wednesday, we do know that Jesper Wallstad has that 140-minute plus shutout streak. He'll put it on the line tonight. He gets the nod against Carolina. I would assume this weekend each guy will get a chance to play against Pittsburgh and Winnipeg, but I think John Hines will let that play out after the game tonight and see where Wallsted's game is at. But he's been brilliant. It isn't just the shutouts. Every start he's made, the Wild have got at least 1 point, so he's yet to lose in regulation, which is really cool. And I think he's pushing Gus, and that's any goalie will tell you that if it's a two-man tandem and both are playing well, there's a competitive nature for everybody that wants to get them back in the net. They want to play. And so when Wallstedt plays as well as he's played, that forces the hand of Gustafsson, who's kind of followed along, and now he's starting to get hot. So all boats will rise if the goalies are going to battle like this all year, that the Wild are going to be in a good position by the end of the year. They put themselves in a tough spot. There's no getting around it. When you start the way they did, 3-5-2 in their first 10 games, put them in a really defensive mode as far as the standings. Western Conference is loaded. And I think there's a handful of teams that you pretty much, even here in November, barring significant injuries, say, you know what, they're likely going to be there. You know, I mean, Colorado and Dallas and Vegas, and I even put teams like LA in there. And so there's a handful where you're like, yeah, the Wild are going to have to outduel those bottom three. And if you get in the playoffs, you know, and I think we saw this last year. I went back before the Vegas game this past week and watched all the highlights of all 6 games in that Wild versus Golden Knights playoff series last year. And I'm telling you, the Wild probably should have won that series. And it wasn't just the offsides play by Nyquist. They could have won any of the final 3 games where the 2-1 Wild lead in the series was tipped. Every one of those games was there for the taking. We all point to Game 5 because Hartman scores what looks like it's going to be the winning goal to put them up 3-2 in the series. And that was an unbelievable pivot point in that series. But there were other situations and other games where the Wild kind of late in the game made one little mistake that Vegas capitalized on. So they're not that far away. They're playing better hockey. They're going to have to weather the storm right now with a couple of centers hurt. But certainly things are looking up in St. Paul with this hockey team right now. So before we get to Sam Ekstrom, we've got to thank our partners in crime. And if you want to be a part of the show or have somebody in your circle of friends or family that is interested, pin me on my social media platform. Best place to find me is Twitter or X at Gorgomatic21, and we'll get you in there. For now, though, these are the people that make this show go, and I'll start with John Schweitz and my dear friends at Minnesota Masonic Charities. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Masonic Charities. When you think about the Masons, I get it. You think about the funny hats, those pancake breakfasts, which are phenomenal. My dear friend John Schweitz and I have chatted about this, and it's so much more than that. They've got the Masonic home over in Bloomington. They've got the hospital for the children over at the U of M. They are the largest fraternal organization in terms of charitable needs in our country, and they deserve a ton of recognition. So thank you, Minnesota Masonic Charities, for all you do and for supporting us over here at Talk North, and a special thanks to my good friend, John Schweitz. I also want to thank the great people of Onyx Maps and Onyx Fish.
Have you ever driven past a piece of land and wondered who owns that? Or maybe you need to know exactly where a property line runs. That's where Onyx Hunt comes in. And it's not just for hunters. There are folks using Onyx for their jobs every day throughout the country. From farmers and ranchers mapping out their fields, wildland firefighters navigating rough terrain, to construction workers needing to know who owns what property, this app offers something for everyone. If you need the best land ownership maps, aerial imagery, and property boundaries in your pocket, Onyx Hunt is the tool for the job. Try it free for 7 days. Download Onyx Hunt in the app or Google Play Store, or visit onyxmaps.com/hunt to get started.
We got Rosie's buddies over at the fantastic facility we call StretchLab.
Hey, Rosie here for StretchLabs. I've been talking about them for months now, and it's part of my regular exercise routine. They're located throughout the Twin Cities, and no matter who you sign up for, they have great stretch practitioners that will work with you. They are great at stretching out your hips, your back, your neck, whatever might be aching you, but more importantly, being proactive about your overall health. They understand how your body works and what you need, no matter what your age, really no matter what the shape you're in, but understand how important stretching is. Black Friday right now will offer the best pricing on bundle packages of stretches. Get anywhere from 3 to 20 sessions at a discounted rate. Hey, it also makes a great gift. And for Talk North listeners, they will have access to Black Friday pricing for all of November. So check them out for yourself. StretchLabs throughout the Twin City area.
And of course, our dear friends at Lexus in Wayzata and Maplewood. All right, hockey fans, welcome back to Wooden Sticks. As always, recording today from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. Excited to talk with a dear friend of mine, the voice of St. Thomas hockey, both on the men's and women's side, TV and radio, Mr. Sam Ekstrom. Sam, thanks for doing this today.
What a pleasure to be on with you, Kevin, a guy that I have the utmost respect for in this industry. And, if we start talking about the past, I really have just followed your footsteps, calling games at Burnsville, calling games at St. Thomas, just living the Kevin Gorg life.
I'll tell you what, there are worse places to make a living than the Penny and Lee Anderson beautiful arena over in St. Paul on the campus of St. Thomas. I was lucky enough to see you over there for the beautiful grand opening a couple weeks ago. You've had a chance now to be there for just a couple of games. What are your early assessments of how it's being digested by everybody over at the campus?
Yeah, I mean, all good things, right? Like the contrast is as great as you can imagine, going from St. Thomas Ice Arena and a high school setup that they called home for 4 years, and they made the most of it, and they had a lot of success there, and they broke a lot of barriers, in that time as a program and all the programs. But thinking specifically of hockey, to go from that to now go to what they have, which is like the Taj Mahal of college hockey facilities, $183 million, and to have the strength and conditioning resources, the training resources, the practice ice, the in-game experience, all of it went from, probably bottom tier in college hockey to probably top 5, top 10. So everyone's thrilled with what it means for the recruiting, the fan experience, trying to build up this fan base, all good things, and really unbelievable that we got here by year 5 of D1, and all the things that had to come together to make it happen.
I got to ask you about the student section, because I was really impressed on that opening night when the men were playing Providence with the support from the students at St. Thomas and their involvement in the game. And it started with the opening puck drop. Lee and Penny Anderson dropped the first puck. They were chanting Lee and Penny as they left the ice. They were standing throughout most of that hockey game. They were chanting. I think everything from looking from the outside looking in as a former player and a former coach at St. Thomas, everything that we had hoped to see. My question to you, Sam, is this something that's going to be not only sustainable, but is it going to be a thing for students to come over and take that in? Because as far as I could see opening night, it was as good as it gets.
Yeah, I think that, in terms of on-campus activities, like it's probably one of the best things you can do. And I don't think students are paying for tickets. I think they want to pack that thing with 1,000 every night. And, think about the hockey team specifically. And it's not a knock on the basketball team. The basketball team is going to compete to get in March Madness. And, they're probably going to be at some point here, they will be a Cinderella team. And you'll watch them on CBS knocking off like a 4 seed someday. But this hockey team, it's within the realm of possibility that they could compete for national championships. They could be in Frozen Fours. Like that is very much on the table with this recruiting base and this market and all the talent in Minnesota. They're going to put together rosters that are going to compete at that level. And when you compete at that level, that's going to be a draw long term. Like that's going to get the students in seats. That's going to become a huge spectacle on campus. So I think they're going to take pride in creating a raucous atmosphere behind the goaltender. They're kind of stacked on top of them back there, 1,000 strong. And I think once they join the NCHC too, Kevin, there's going to be some big name opponents coming in here on a regular basis. You're going to have North Dakota in there. You're going to have Denver in there, Duluth, St. Cloud State, Arizona State, even Colorado College, like name brands in college hockey. And that as well, I think will get butts in seats.
I think it's going to be spectacular. And I'm glad you mentioned where the student section is located, right behind the visitors net, the attacking zone for St. Thomas in the first and third period. And as I mentioned, when I was there to watch them play Providence, I mean, these kids were all over the goalie. They were standing up the entire time. It really created a home ice advantage. And I think for St. Thomas, you mentioned it, playing over at St. Thomas Academy at that smaller arena, there were some nights when it was pretty festive in there. And I remember when Minnesota State came to town for a big series a couple years ago, there was atmosphere in there. This is a different vibe. And then you mentioned the amenities. I think it comes down to recruiting. And in a world now where these top players want everything, and frankly, they're getting everything, from money from the NIL to, the arena, the workout facility. If Rico and his staff are going to be competitive with the big dogs out there, and I think of North Dakota and that facility, this is something they had to have. And now that you have a rink on campus with the amenities that they have there, I think it's finally a level playing field. And I think, Sam, looking at St. Thomas right now, where they are and the schedule they're playing, I don't think the national tournament's that far to reach here in the next couple of years.
No, I mean, it could happen as soon as this year if they win the conference championship, right? And they were in the conference championship game last year, tied 2-2 with 10 minutes to go in the third period against Minnesota State Mankato. Now, last year they weren't eligible. They couldn't have advanced, but they could have won the conference. And I think that they'll be right there in that mix this year. And to your point, I think that the level playing field is a real thing because there is money in college hockey. There is NIL in college hockey. But we're not talking about the obscene figures where a player might say, well, I'm getting $1 million from this blue blood program. I'm going to go there. It's not that kind of money. So facilities really do matter an incredible amount because now, I mean, the Tommies got to visit Ralph Engelstad earlier in the year. Now you can actually say, well, hey, Ralph Engelstad has this, but so do we. Like, we've got a lot of the same type of things, at least from like a day-to-day standpoint, that are competitive with the best programs in college hockey.
And I think St. Thomas has always had the Twin Cities market and all the different Fortune 500 companies, the St. Paul, the Minneapolis, all the different places these students can make connections or just go have a good time. It's a great draw card. So I'm excited to see where it's going. Let's assess the team. 4-5-2, 1-1-1 within the CCHA. A great series with the Mavericks, who I think is the team to beat in this conference this year. How would you grade them out here in the first, third of the season?
Yeah, young, a lot of new on this year's team. And I think putting it together as we speak, the month of October was really challenging. And get this, Kevin. So they've had 7 possible weekends to play hockey. And due to some random one-off series, some home and homes, some big trips, they've only had 2 series of the 7 where they got to play in the same building on a Friday and Saturday night. So there just hasn't been a lot of normalcy. And those two series where they actually got a normal 2-game set, one of them was at altitude at Air Force, and the other one was the building opener with all that hoopla. So they just haven't been able to settle in, and they saw some leads get away in third periods, like in the building opener. Kevin, you were there, 2-0 lead against a ranked Providence team and turned into a 2-2 tie. They saw the next night a 4-1 lead against Providence slip away. So just some leads that, had they not slipped away, the record would look a lot better. Might be a national ranking, like very close to having a few more wins early in the season. But based on what I've seen recently, they're playing a lot cleaner third periods, a lot more sound defensively. They seem to have found something with this freshman goaltender, Will Ingeman, who's gotten the last 4 starts, and maybe that's the stability they needed in net because they were bouncing around a little bit. They couldn't really figure out who their netminder was. I think that Rico's teams have often peaked in the second half of the season, and I'm guessing the same this year with 10 freshmen, 5 transfers. Once that personnel gels, that I think they're really going to make a run here for the CCHA.
And the stability that they haven't had now comes the next 4 weekends. As I look at the schedule, home to Bowling Green for 2, at Michigan Tech for 2, home to Lake Superior State for 2, at Northern Michigan for 2, and that takes us into the holiday break. So you get 4 consecutive weekends, all conference games. And this is the kind of run, Sam, where if they play at their very best, if it's peak St. Thomas hockey under Rico Blasi, you could go 6-2, 7-1, and maybe even 8-0. I mean, these are teams that are all good enough to beat you, but certainly teams, if St. Thomas plays their best, they could have a nice little run here.
Yeah, there's a couple of those series that you probably circle and you say you easily could get 6 points. You could come out with 2 wins and probably should against a Northern Michigan, and you don't want to overlook anybody. I can say this because I'm not a player, I'm not a coach. I think they should be favored heavily in those games. And Lake State probably gettable as well. There might be a little more top heaviness to the conference this year with some teams on the bottom that are still in rebuild mode. So there are points to be gotten, and they could really go into this break rolling. Bowling Green this weekend will be tough. That's a good program that's kind of taken people by surprise the past couple of years with a new coach. So that'll be a challenge, but it's a good chance to get into that rhythm, to get into conference play. You know the most about these opponents. You don't know a lot about some of those non-conference opponents, a little harder to play against. When you put St. Thomas up against a team where they've got a chance to scout them, they have the book on them, they're often it's hard to beat this Tommy's team when they have that advantage.
So if fans are listening to the podcast and at some point they're going to try to get out, see the new rink, and check out this hockey team, give me a player or two when you're calling the game. If you were going to ask a fan to kind of, hey, take a look at this kid, let's watch what he does. Give me a couple names and numbers for these listeners to the show that when they come over to watch St. Thomas play, they can kind of lock in on these guys and they might get a little treat as far as entertainment value goes.
Yeah, I think Lucas Wallen, and I'm sure you knew I was going to say his name. He's one of the most fun athletes that you can watch on the ice. He's a third-year captain, senior, just hit the 100-point plateau last week. He is relentless in his work ethic. He is as fast as anyone on the ice. He's just as good on the power play as he is the penalty kill. He does the dirty work. He scores breakaway goals right and left. He's head and shoulders different than everybody else. You got to go out and watch number 3, Lucas Wallen, the captain. And they've got an awesome new line mate for him this year that came over from Harvard for his final year via the portal, Alex Gaffney. Alex Gaffney is kind of a Wallen clone in that he's a little short in stature,
5'9". Yeah.
super fast, and sees the ice really well. It's like he and Wallen have been playing together for years. That scoring line with Wallen and Gaffney is unbelievable to watch. And then they've got a newcomer. The new in college hockey this year, you've got the high juniors, the Canadian, the Western Hockey League. Those are now eligible to come over and play college hockey. And they got a terrific scorer, Nathan Pilling, from the Seattle team in the WHL. And Nathan leads the conference in shots on goal. He's been really impactful early in the season. Still just 21 years old. Like he's got a really bright future ahead of him. And he's kind of their second line scoring. So Nathan's been awesome. Wallen and Gaffney, really fun to watch as well.
Yeah, Pilling scored a goal in the game I was at. He's 6'4", he's 210 pounds. As you mentioned, he's young, he's still growing. He really caught my eye, and I am partial to the first guy you talked about. I knew you'd get there at some point with Wallen. I had a chance to meet him over the summer. He spoke at a leadership summit for all the high school captains on the boys and girls side in high school hockey. I could not have been more impressed with this young man. And then as we were leaving the event, I had a private conversation with Rico, and I just asked Rico to shoot me straight. Like, I've seen this kid play. I know he's a really good player. What about the next level? And Rico didn't hesitate, didn't waffle, and frankly said, Kevin, listen, this guy is going to play in the NHL. And I'm like, that is really high praise from, and Rico, he's a pretty low key, like he's not a bombastic guy. And so for him to say that, and he knows him as well as anybody, I thought that was pretty remarkable. So if you get out, definitely keep an eye on those players. I love the facility. I love the atmosphere. And I know for you, the sight line's calling the game, just technically being a play-by-play guy. In a lot of games, you're working solo. How nice is it to have the vantage point that you have just above we'll call it the lower bowl for a lack of a better term, but you're pretty close to the ice there, Sam.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, I think there is such thing as too close at times. Like there's a reason why it's fun to call games at the X, because you're so high up that you can actually see the far side of the ice just as clearly as the near side of the ice. You're on top of the action. When you are so close, there are some very technical challenges at times. Like the far corner might be a little tougher to pick out a number than if you were a little higher up, but you like being close to the energy. It's totally worth it. Like you want to be, close to the fans. You want to pick up that ambient noise. And it's really second to none. You got the big video board in front of you as well, which is an awesome feature at that new rink. There's some old school rinks in the CCHA, Kevin. There's some 50, 60-year-old barns in there that have a ton of character, and they're fun to be in for that reason. But the Tommies now vault, I think, to the top of the conference in terms of facility.
Well, in a couple weeks, you're going to be at Michigan Tech, and one of my all-time favorite trips I made in broadcasting was back when we were covering Gopher hockey. We had a weekend at Michigan Tech. I brought my daughters, and it is a beautiful campus. You're right by the water. The rink is old school. It's fun. For you, where does Michigan Tech rank as far as some of the rinks you've worked in?
Boy, Tech's got to be top 3. I'm trying to assemble the list in my head as we speak, and it's, there's different categories, right? Because you've got the new builds, you've got the Penn State's been there, Arizona State been there, so like the new builds have their own flavor, and then you've got the old school ones, and that's Michigan Tech, like John McInnes Student Ice Arena. There's just the students make that place come alive. The band makes that place come alive. They have a wonderful in-game fabric that's been created, but I think kind of got the wooden ceilings, the arch ceilings. Yeah, super quaint and cool. There's also a lot of character at Lake State. I mean, Lake State, it's like all blue, and you can see the history there because they had some championship teams in the past. I like Lake State a lot. That's a sneaky one. There's some, what's a good one, Kevin, is Vermont. Vermont is another real, old school. You're calling the game from like a hanging plank, like a piece of scaffolding, basically over the ice. But really, really fun when we went out there. I think it was 23. We played 2 games.
Ironically, it was about a decade ago. So somewhere around 2015, we did a series out there the week of Thanksgiving, so it's almost to the day, and I had never been to that rink. And the Gophers had a morning skate on that Friday. We flew in on Thanksgiving night on that Thursday, so it was Black Friday. It was the game, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Why has this not been in movies?" Really a spectacular venue. So when St. Thomas goes to, let's say, Michigan Tech here in a week and change, that's got to be a bus trip, not a flight, right?
Yeah, that's a bus. Yeah, there's a lot of schools they play in Michigan that are just not easily gettable by plane. So you're driving to Lake State. That's 9 hours. Michigan Tech's about 6. Ferris State, that's like a flight into Detroit and then a 1-hour drive, and then you bus back 10, 11 hours. So there's some long trips. I think they'll enjoy switching to the NCHC for some bigger markets more easily reached by plane. But also those bus trips are not like, that's kind of where the bonding happens too, Kevin.
I agree how totally. I love it.
Yeah. That's where you get a feel for the friendships and the inside jokes and the guys just, having a ball together. When you're locked in a moving rectangle for 12 hours, you really learn a lot about people.
Yeah, some of those memories for me as a college player and even a junior player when I played in the USHL in Des Moines, the bus trips were some of the best memories I have of those seasons. So let's get back to where it all began. Like, take us back to when you were a little kid, Sam. At what point did you even find out that you had an interest or a passion not only for hockey but for broadcasting? Where did this come from?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of broadcasters tend to narrow in on this career pretty early. You don't typically talk to people that made a career change at 35 and became a broadcaster. Usually, pretty young. And I knew when I was 6. Like I was calling games off the TV, probably before I could, write in cursive or, do other basic things. So I kind of had tunnel vision the whole time on it and never really wavered off of that. And that kind of allowed me to make a lot of my educational decisions, job decisions when I was in my late teens, early 20s, kind of around that, with that being the main goal. There's probably some embarrassing footage of me trying to announce sports when I was like 8, 9 years old on the old home videotapes.
Was it always hockey growing up, or was there other sports that interested you as far as play-by-play goes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. It ended up being hockey. That kind of ended up being the path that I took, and it's been unbelievable. But I think it could have easily been any of the others. I love football. I love baseball. I love basketball. I called all of the other sports during my years calling high school as well. A lot of volleyball, right? Called lacrosse, downhill skiing. Like I kind of considered myself a generalist where I could have gone in any number of directions. And it just so happened that I filled the void that was needed. When the St. Thomas job opened, this is in 21, there was football available, there was basketball available, there was hockey available. Those were the three that they were going to hire out for. And I would have been interested in any one of those. Corbu Status, highly talented broadcaster. He's, holding down the football and basketball jobs, and I got hockey. And that kind of opened up a lot of doors for me. Kevin, I'll be honest with you. I did not play hockey growing up. A fan of the game, passionate about the teams and the sport, did not play it. So I don't have the on-ice experience that like my analysts do when I'm calling games. I lean heavily on them for insight into that because I've not been in those battles on the half wall. I've not stopped pucks like you have. But yeah, hockey's kind of become my love now because of, it's my career. But I don't think that was always necessarily the lone sport I could have done. I think it could have gone any number of ways.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I haven't done a lot of play-by-play, but I've done enough to know the differences. And I've done baseball, I've done basketball, I've done football, and I've done some hockey. And they're all stressful for somebody that more naturally is an analyst or a reporter. But I'm going to tell you right now, for me personally, even though I know hockey way more than those other sports, hockey for me doing play-by-play was without a doubt the most stressful of the four that I called. And for me, it was, I knew one of the teams well. Usually the team I did a Gopher North Dakota series. I knew the Gophers at that time pretty well up and down the roster. This was back in the Brock Faber era 4 or 5 years ago. But the opponent and the line changes and keeping track of all of that while calling a game for you. And I'm certain you've called a bunch of different sports. Where does the stress level lie? Mm-hmm. Even though hockey's your bread and butter, comparing the sports.
Yeah, I think there's a little more pressure in the preparation, certainly to focus on player identification and to familiarize yourself. Now, I think everyone has their own process. I have a numerical roster that I work off of. I think a lot of broadcasters, they go lines, right?
Yep.
I have to work numerically. So I've got the roster 1 through whatever in front of me, just below my eye level at all times. Now I attempt to memorize before the game. I'd like to think that I have the whole opponent's roster memorized. If I know one team well, hopefully I've got a good handle on the other one. But once the bullets start flying, per se, hockey's very unpredictable. You don't know you're not sure which line is going to be out there with which pairing. Like the numbers come at you fast, and if you take too much time to look it up, you're behind the play. So I sit for about 10, 15 minutes during warm-ups, just watching the team I'm unfamiliar with. And I just mutter to myself. People think that I'm probably crazy because I'm just standing there trying to get as many calls as I can of the players on that other team, even as they're just warming up, trying to get the names out of my mouth, making sure that feels comfortable, that I'm familiar with saying the names out loud. And hopefully, once the actual game starts, I've kind of nailed that in. And then maybe by the second or third period, I can put my roster down with confidence that I'm going to get that 100% right.
It's stressful, and having done the job, I can only imagine on the fly just trying to memorize and remember. And you're right, you look down for 2-3 seconds, and something can happen within the play. And it's funny that you talk about the numeric order that you use, because I've got two dear friends calling Wild games, Joe O'Donnell on the radio side, Anthony LaPanta on the TV side. They both do it differently. Joe's a numerical order guy like you are, and Anthony, from the time we were doing high school hockey games together back in the early 90s, has always built those line charts, and it's a personal preference thing, and it's whatever gets you through it. And they both have talked about how it's really helpful to be calling the same team, game by game, like you mentioned, knowing that St. Thomas roster. It cuts the prep down a little bit, but when the play starts going, and in some of these buildings you're not right on top of the play like you are at St. Thomas or even Vermont. Different venues offer different challenges, and it happens fast. And, the difference in baseball and basketball and football, for the most part, the same players are out there. I mean, basketball, there's some subbing for sure, but, you look at football and basketball, once the game gets going, everybody's where they're supposed to be, play by play or shift by shift. In basketball, it's different in terms of hockey and how quick that changes. And there's 4 lines of players, so I don't know how you do it.
It's a wonderful challenge, though. Like, wouldn't you agree that after a good hockey call, I mean, Kevin, when you call that North Dakota, and I know exactly the game you're talking about, you got the Matthew Nyes game winner in overtime.
Look at you.
I was jealous of you. Well, I was going to call the game the next day, and you were kind enough to to fill in and do an awesome job. And I remember hearing you call that goal, and I had goosebumps. So it feels there's nothing more rewarding than kind of nailing hockey, because it is the most stressful. It requires probably the most talking. It's almost like the TV and radio call are a bit indiscernible because you have to talk so much for both. And you probably are not going to pitch a perfect game. There's going to be little touches of the puck that you fumble or you miss, and something happens and you're a little slow on the ID. But if you can get in a rhythm, if you get in that zone as a hockey announcer, there's nothing better. So you get that broadcast high after a good hockey game. And I don't know about you, Kevin, I'm worn out. I usually need to go eat a full meal because I burn some calories after one of those bad boys.
And I'm standing the whole time. And that's the part that gets me as I get a little closer to 60 here is when the Wild play, let's just say it's a home game, like I just worked a couple of days ago, we're starting our day a couple hours before face-off. We're usually having a chance to visit with the coaching staff. You do the same thing, I know, over at St. Thomas. We have maybe a 15-minute window to talk and get a little insight from the coaches. Maybe there's an update on guys that are hurt or sick. You're basically on your feet for us. I mean, it's from 4 or 4:30 until you get done with the post-game show, which is around 10 o'clock. And 5.5, 6 hours straight of moving around in dress shoes, I feel it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's pathetic, but I feel it. And by the end of the night, I'm like mentally and physically drained. I can never sleep after a game. Whenever I come home, especially a good game, it'll take me an hour or two to unwind. Usually I'm watching either Seinfeld reruns or Dateline or something late night. But I don't know how you feel about that. But after a really good game, it takes me a while to come down.
Yeah, I've not met a broadcaster who's early to bed. I mean, most of us are night owls.
Right.
I get home, maybe it's a 7 o'clock game. I get home 10:30, and I'm probably up for 2 more hours. I need to have some time to just be in the quiet. I think I need some time to unwind. I feel the exact same way, and I stand the whole game like you do for the most part to keep that energy up. That's the best way that I know how to do it. And I don't want to, sometimes I really enjoy reflecting on the broadcast. I think some broadcasters can kind of avoid their own voice. They don't want to go back and critique or listen. And I really do like to go back and listen and see what I can do better and how it sounded on air. If I thought it sounded good in the moment, did it actually sound good when I listened back? And I try to compare my thoughts to reality. So that I can always keep developing that skill and not get complacent in it. And that's a lot of the times what I'm doing that night is I'm just going back and re-listening, re-consuming to see if it still holds up.
Let's talk favorite play-by-play guys over the years that you've loved to listen or watch call a hockey game. I've got a couple in my mind as a hockey fan, but you're the pro. You're the guy that does it. So you can probably have a different appreciation for the job some of these big-time national guys have done or are doing. Do you have a couple of names that, going back when you watched those games, you were like, this is the best of the best. This is the GOAT. This is who I want to model my game after being this good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to start with Doc.
Yes.
With any conversation we have has to start with the GOAT. It's Doc Emmerich. It's I find myself inspired to have the vocabulary of Doc. Doc, he found a way to say pass 50 different ways per game. And it never sounded forced. It was just Doc. And He kept that energy so high all game. Wonderful voice. Wonderful storyteller. Like he was unbelievable at being frantic when the moment called for it, but in the quiet moments, he could also storytell. He would have been a great baseball announcer because of how he could kind of paint a picture. So I look up a lot to Doc. I try to kind of have that mindset of, being able to rise to the chaos of hockey, but also being able to spin a yarn about a player, if you get a chance. And then I go even further back, the guy who called the Stanley Cups before him, Gary Thorne. Gary Thorne was like, what a great passing of the torch to go from Thorne to Emmerich for, I don't know how many decades we got those two calling the biggest games in hockey, but Thorne, one of my favorites. And you know what? Also a great baseball announcer. He called Orioles games for many years, but his goal calls, like overtime in the Stanley Cup, that was someone who knew how to punctuate a moment and absolutely hammer it. So I got major respect for Thorne, major respect for Emmerich, the guys who have done it best. How about you?
Vin, well, I think Doc is the right answer at the top of the list. He's kind of like our hockey's version of Vin Scully. Like when I think of great baseball calls, I think of Vin Scully, the all-time best. And I think the same thing with Doc Emmerich. He's my all-time favorite. Games just felt bigger when he called them. I agree with Gary Thorne. I'm going to throw one more name out. Might be a little before your time, but I'm certain you're going to know who this guy is. Chris Cuthbert is Hockey Night in Canada's voice. And he's 68 years old, still at the top of his game. A lot like Al Michaels. I think he does it for the love of the game. He called our state championship game 40-plus years ago when I was playing at Burnsville. We played Hill Murray, and I had the chance to get to know him over the years. One of the nicest human beings I've ever encountered. He is incredible at play-by-play. Like his voice is just iconic north of the border. So for me, Doc Emmerich here, Chris Cuthbert north of the border. He's done Olympics. He's done it all. And I just think that we're blessed on the national side to have some really, really talented guys. But those are the guys I think of.
Yeah, Cuthbert, the Sidney Crosby golden goal on the Canadian broadcast. Emmerich on the American broadcast. So whether you're north or south of the border, you got a great call of that one. What I think is also cool is that you've got a guy like Doc who has infinite number of words in his vocabulary. And then now you've got Kenny Albert, calling these big games, kind of alternating with Sean McDonough. And Albert, I think, does the fundamentals as well as anybody in hockey. He's not fanciful. He's not overly verbose. He just gets it right every single time. He doesn't screw up. He gets he orients the puck. He's always got the players right. He resets the storylines. He just does it so perfectly, just precision. He's a surgical announcer, very different than Doc, but still very effective in his own way.
Yeah, great stuff. And it is a big part of, I think, fans' enjoyment of the games is identifying with that voice. And I'm certain there are people right now following St. Thomas hockey that identify the Tommies with your voice, Sam. And I think it's a really cool thing. I think Anthony has cultivated that with our Wild fans. I think it's really cool that matters. And it mattered to me from the time I was 5 or 6 years old watching hockey on TV. It's what drew me to the game. It's what drew me to broadcasting. There is something about that connection that we make as broadcasters with the viewers or listeners that really matters to me. Before I get to the hat trick hot seat, when we're going to learn some things about you, maybe away from the rink, I got to ask you about both zone coverage and locked on. We've got, I think, a lot of people that tune into Wooden Sticks here that I think might be big time fans of some of the other work you do in town.
Yeah, no doubt. Zone coverage was a really awesome period of my career. So I when I moved on to podcasting, Kev, I sort of hung up the writing pen for the time being, but zone coverage kind of proliferated in about 2016, 17. It started as a group of guys writing about sports for a radio station, 105 The Ticket. And for me, I was on these parallel paths. I was doing the play-by-play path and then the everything else path. And the everything else path was everything that could make my play-by-play path possible. Like I just had to work in sports and do enough stuff that I could justify continuing to pursue this play-by-play dream on the side. So I was radio producing, I was writing, I was radio engineering. I was just saying yes to everything. And I through the radio station, kind of writing kind of became my main day job. And a bunch of guys put together this website called Zone Coverage, which is still around today, with real thoughtful work about the Vikings and the Twins and the Timberwolves. And I was pretty heavily involved with the Vikings and got to be a fully credentialed Vikings writer from a super young age. And I really had very few guardrails and kind of figured it out as I was going. But really grateful for Tom Schreier and the guys over there that gave me that opportunity, which I was there until about 2021. And then I pivoted to podcasting, where I had done some work for the Locked On Podcast Network before when it was in its infancy. I did a daily Vikings show for them and, took some time off from that. And then in 2022, David Locke, their wonderful CEO, play-by-play man in his own right. He calls the Utah Jazz games. That's his second job. I got a chance to come back to Locked On and sort of oversee and host their Minnesota market, where they've got a lot of good shows. Kevin, I know you've been involved with Locked On Wild, doing some shows with Seth Topol. And so I host Talking a Lot of Vikings during the day on Locked On Vikings, and also overseeing a team that talks NFL around the country. So a little managerial, a little hosting, and it's turned into one of the top podcast networks in the country. So really happy to be here as well.
So what do you think of JJ McCarthy? I know it's a big talker right now, and living here all my life, I mean, Vikings football, I know it's the state of hockey, but trust me, and I know you know this, Vikings football is everything. So how do you assess the first handful of games for this young quarterback?
Yeah, it's tough to be patient. You can preach it. You can talk about how we're going to have patience and we're not going to fail this young quarterback. But when the rubber meets the road and the fans are booing and you are losing consecutive games and falling out of the playoff race, it has got to be hard for Kevin O'Connell to be patient with this process, because jobs are at stake. You've got veteran players with tight windows, like Harrison Smith and Adam Thielen might be in their swan song. You want to win now for them. You've got a bunch of 30-plus-year-old veterans making big money on that roster. They want to win now. They didn't agree to this patience, right? Like the coach and the GM and the owners, they may have signed up for it, but a lot of the guys in that locker room didn't. So there are a lot of competing pressures here. You've got the pressure to be patient with this young investment you have in JJ McCarthy. You've got this pressure to win and to fulfill what the fan base expected. And they've gotten used to winning with this coach, because he's won 13 games in a season and 14 games in a season. So there was a very high expectation for this young quarterback. And boy, you see the high-end stuff, Kevin. Like, you do see some of the throws he's made. Maybe not so much in that Chicago game where it was mostly negative, but in the previous weeks, you have seen him really rise to the occasion in some big spots. He makes some pinpoint throws, and then some of the other throws are 8 yards off. So if you could somehow dial in and just mitigate some of the rough edges, get him to use his legs a little more smartly, I think that the high-end stuff is there. Like, you see the glimpses, but it all offsets when he makes some of the blunders that he's been making. So I guess I do see the vision, and I'm willing to give it the rest of this season. But I think they have to be willing to admit a mistake if they think it is one. I would not waste multiple years on something that would be irredeemable. I'm not saying he is irredeemable. I just want the organization to be decisive in how they approach it.
I'm with you, and I think it's awfully early to make any assessment when a guy's played less than 10 games. And so let it play out a little bit. I'm with you on the patience that is needed. I think Vikings fans had to wait an extra year, and they watched Daniel Jones get off to a great start this year with the Colts, and now they're watching Sam Darnold have an MVP-type season with the Seahawks. But I think it's important to remember that when you have the confidence to move up and pick a kid in the draft where they pick this kid, and you look at other quarterbacks, and I'm going to go back to my Bronco-loving days when I was much younger. John Elway, his first year in Denver was awful. And the same conversations were being had in Denver about John Elway we wasted the pick. We wasted all this money. It's not going to work out. And it turned out that the guy took him to a bunch of Super Bowls, won a couple, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So let's just slow it down a little bit and realize that right now this kid's still learning. It's not a perfect situation. I don't think he's had a lot of support. And I think as time goes on, I think this kid's got a chance to be something. I'm not giving up on him. And I love the kid. I know he's got the hockey-loving background, so I'm probably a little bit biased. But I don't think anybody can say 5 or 6 games into a guy's career at that position that it's time to pull the plug. I think he needs at least 2 years of football, and then you figure it out. And I'll agree with you on this, Sam. Next year, they have to have somebody other than Max Brosmer waiting in the wings. And that's not a shot at Max Brosmer, but if this team wants to contend and you get into a situation where this guy gets hurt, which has happened, or you need to make a change, you've got to have a player back there with some experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question about it. I think that there are plenty of quarterbacks around the league, too, that you can point to and say their second year starting was a lot better than their first. And I think you have to take the perspective of washing away that rookie year for JJ McCarthy. He didn't get to be on the field. He was hurt. So this really is, in effect, his rookie year. If he can enjoy the same ascension that Caleb Williams has in Chicago, you saw it from Joe Burrow from year 1 to year 2. He led the Bengals to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen took a couple of years, right? So some of them are ready baked when they show up, and some of them take a little bit, and then some of them are the slow cookers, the Darnolds, the Geno Smiths, the Baker Mayfields, right? They enjoy their success elsewhere. And I think that's the biggest fear, is that you give up too quickly, and in a couple of years, JJ McCarthy's popping up, and he is the next Darnold or Mayfield or Daniel Jones. And that's what you don't want to happen by being too impatient.
I couldn't have put it any better. That's a great point, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think it's fascinating to see a young player with some talent. The Vikings have had some success bringing guys in over the years, but I want to see them draft and develop a stud quarterback. It's been a while. Dante Culpepper's the last one I can think of. So let's let it play out maybe just a little bit. All right, we're to the hat trick hot seat. 3 questions. It's not really a hot seat. We're just going to learn a little bit about Sam Ekstrom away from the rink, and I'll start with this one. You get a rare night off on the weekend, and you want to go out to your favorite restaurant for a special dinner in the Twin Cities. Where are you headed?
Ooh, I'm trying to decide. Let's say Red Rabbit. I think there's maybe some slightly higher end options that I really adore. There's your Porzanas and your Spoon and Stables, but Red Rabbit does the pasta so well, their pizza so well, and their wings so well. Like wow. I think they really their whole menu is really solid, and my wife and I find ourselves ordering from them more than anywhere else. So that's maybe the go-to spot. If it's a really nice sit down, I'm probably going Spoon and Stable.
Yeah, I've not been to Red Rabbit. I need to try that, especially with that combination of food you just listed. Spoon and Stable is excellent. Those are good picks, really good picks. All right, your all-time favorite movie. And I know this can shift and it can change, and there are different categories. So if you want to clarify, well, this is my favorite sports movie, or this is my favorite, gangster movie. But if you're going to sit down on a bus, maybe with the Tommies, and take the trip to Houghton, and you maybe want to watch your favorite movie, what movie you popping in?
Well, since we've talked a lot of hockey, I will say my favorite sports movie is Miracle. That's not an exaggeration. I just think that it's a story that, were it not true, maybe it would seem far-fetched, but it is true. like the way the game played out, it's just it's unbelievable. And Kurt Russell as Herb Brooks. So that's my favorite sports movie. My favorite movie all time, and I'm a big Christopher Nolan guy. You got to go further back in his catalog to The Prestige. Which,
wow.
Have you seen The Prestige, Kevin? I know you're a big movie buff.
I have seen it, and I love that movie.
Yeah. Competing magicians. It's great cinema. There's a big twist. I don't want to spoil. It's 20 years old. I don't want to spoil it for anybody though. But it's, Christian Bale. It's Hugh Jackman. It's exquisite. I could watch it once a week.
Phenomenal pick, and I'll go back to your sports movie with Miracle. My key in seeing any good sports movie is the broadcast side of the movie. You either have the real guy or you have a real play-by-play guy in the movie. I think of Vin Scully in Kevin Costner's For the Love of the Game. You bring up Miracle. They've got the actual calls from Al Michaels. To me, that's the great separator in any great sports movie. And if you love hockey like you and I do, Sam, how do you not love Miracle? That movie, if it's on and I'm clicking around at home, it's like a magnetic force field. I can't move away. Like even middle of the day, like I have to have it on. And then I wait for that speech, the Herb Brooks speech, when he's sitting in that room and he walks in to talk to the guys. It takes you to a place of, it's magical.
They hired hockey players to act instead of actors to play hockey in that movie, which adds to the authenticity you were talking about. The hockey looks and sounds very good. And it feels, and you genuinely feel like you're watching a hockey locker room because those are hockey players.
One of the guys that they got to play a real player in the movie is Billy Schneider, who's Buzz Schneider's kid. He plays his dad. I coached Billy when I was the Mounds View boys coach back in the late 1990s. And so I've done a couple of charity events with Buzz Schneider, and we always circle back to those years I coached at Mounds View with his son. And it's remarkable to see those guys play all the names we know from the 1980 team, all those heroes, but that play them so well. The Jim Craig character. You want me to take your test, Herb? I'll take your test. I mean, it's got all the feels in that movie. So you picked a good one for me. Last question, and this is one I asked all my guests because most times like today, I'm a lot older and I learned something. So I want to know your first concert, Sam, that you attended. I want to know who the band was or the performer, and I want to know the venue.
Keane, which is that's my favorite band. A lot of people in this country haven't heard of Keane, but
is it Somewhere Only? Hold on, what's
Somewhere Only We Know. That's
that. Yep, song.
That is the big hit. That's the most recognizable. But fell in love with Keane as a teenager. Went to Keane with a good buddy in Kansas City. We're probably talking 07, 08. I don't think I could give you the year, but it was a small-ish venue in Kansas City to see Keane when they were on tour here in the States.
Well, that's really
I've
cool.
And I've seen Keane a number of times since. They were actually here last year, and I went with the same buddy to see him again.
Very cool. Great picks. Before I let you go, if you had to pick right now, and I know we're not going to hold you to this, but as we sit here a week before Thanksgiving, if you had to pick the two teams that end up playing for the championship in the CCHA with a chance to go to the NCAA tournament, who are the two teams?
Boy, I mean, Bemidji State has been unbeatable so far in conference play. So they've been racking up points. They kind of have they have an advantage right now because they played a lot more conference games. I still think that when push comes to shove, that Mavericks team in Mankato, man, they are well coached and they just have winning built into their system. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a rematch. I mean, I think the seeding could go any number of ways in the conference tournament, but once you get into that setting, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Tommies and the Mavericks have a rematch of last year. Winner goes to the NCAA tournament. I'm trying to manifest that into the universe, so that's what we're going to go with, Mavericks, Tommies.
I love the pick, and I hope it comes true because that was a classic matchup, and we saw a great series here just a couple of weeks ago. I think those two teams would be worthy of that type of game on that type of stage. Sammy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. Wish you a great season. I know we're going to work together for a handful of games in the PWHL with the Frost over at Grand Casino Arena. I'm looking forward to that. But I hope you and your family have a great holiday season, and I can't wait to see you at the rink.
Yeah, yours as well, Kevin. Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks so much for having me on.
That's the voice of the Tommies, Mr. Sam Ekstrom, here on Wooden Sticks. I'll be back in a quick minute or two to put a bow on this edition of the show. Okay, time to wrap up the show here. Another week of hockey conversation. Sam Ekstrom, as I expected, put the quarter in the machine and let the professional go to work. Excellent content from Sam. I really loved his football take. He's been around the Vikings a lot in the last few years. So he's got a unique perspective, I think, of the situation right now with JJ McCarthy. And I think, again, if you've heard him call games, he is so good at what he does. I love working with Sam. I've worked with all kinds of different personalities on the play-by-play side, but Sam's got the passion, the knowledge, and he's just super smooth when he calls a game. And so when you hop in that spot as the analyst, he's got natural breaks in the way he calls the game where it's super easy to come in with an opinion and then get out and let him paint the picture. Anybody that can do TV and radio and do them seamlessly is highly talented. Sam is that guy for sure. And then the fact that he's done not just, journalistic things on the writing side, he's hosted podcasts, he's a producer. Like, this kid can do it all. And really fun to kind of hear some of the backstories on how he became a broadcaster, how he knew at age 6 this was something he wanted to do. And clearly, I think a lot of times in life, as we get older, we end up where we're supposed to be. If you've had the chance to take in some of Sam's work, you know that he has found the right place to be. He is extraordinarily gifted at what he does. He makes it look and feel and sound a lot easier than it is, because a lot of these games he's flying solo and he's doing everything from the engineering side of things to getting set up to interviewing the coaches to building the show. And a lot of times he's doing that on the road, on the fly. And I can tell you from watching, it's not easy, way over my head with my technological skills. But love the way he calls the game, and really fun to connect with Sam today. And if you get the chance, I got to tell you, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but truthfully, just as a hockey fan, the Lee and Penny Anderson Arena is something that every local hockey fan should check out. It is a wonderful, wonderful place to take in what could be a hockey game, what could be a basketball game. I know they're going to have concerts there. I think there's going to be some high school hockey there. Get over and check it out. It's awesome. They did it the right way. It's the right size. Think of a little bigger version of Ritter Arena, probably twice the size of Ritter, and I love Ritter Arena. And so check it out. I think you're really going to be impressed with the way they did it, and the hockey is second to none. Like this St. Thomas team is legit. They're one to watch. I know they've played a tough schedule. I know they're below 500. That sweep against North Dakota they suffered through was tough, but they're a very, very entertaining team to watch. They've got some fun series coming up here at home this weekend against Bowling Green, and then December 5th and 6th, their last home series before the holiday break, they take on Lake Superior State. But they've got some big games coming up. They were able to beat St. Cloud State twice, which is huge as they make the transition next year into the NCHC. So a lot of cool things in the world of college hockey, and a tip of the hat to Augustana. A great game last week with the Tommies playing at Augustana. I think it went into extra time there. So another young program that's on the rise, and I think it's great for college hockey and for all of us that love the game. More teams to follow and more depth of hockey here in the Midwest, which is always a good thing. Any requests you have for guests, again, social media at Gorgomatic21. Send me a quick note. We're going to dive into Frost Hockey. They start this week as well. I'll be doing some broadcasting with Sam over there. Alexis Pearson, a former guest on the show, will be front and center. She's terrific. We'll have her on again to kind of assess the early part of the season here. That's certainly on the docket coming up. And I want to wish you and yours the best as Thanksgiving approaches and we get ready for the holidays. We'll have a show for you next week, and we'll dive into more great hockey coverage here on the Talk North Podcast Network. I'm Kevin Gork. Thanks for listening to Wooden Sticks.